I know. I thought it was it's kind of exciting. The last couple of years haven't been necessarily like chalk, but teams close to the top of the odds have moved up or stayed the same, and so it's kind of exciting from that standpoint. But third overall, we're gonna get a great player. Excited to head into meetings next week with our amateur group and start the process of nailing down where we want to line up the board and what it looks like. And I think it's we stayed in a good range where I think we're going to be really excited with what we end up with.
How do you kind of see the tiers? The consensus has been maybe it's a clear 1-2 Schaefer, Misa, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
You want to get our rankings? Well, honestly, I think that's really something we don't necessarily do that that early. That's what we're going to start to do anyways. We won't even get that far next week, and then in June we'll really hammer that down around combine time, where we get into tiers and different rankings and stuff like that. I think at this point it's the scouting calendar is for the most part closed. You've got we just finished U18s down in Texas, and then Memorial Cup still going on with some draft eligibles, and so we'll get a sense of where all the scouts feel their players are in their regions, and the crossover scouts come in and weigh in on that. But the thing about the draft is there's always a lot of public discourse, and then I feel like there's always those people suggest they're surprise picks, but that's just people seeing the board differently, right? And that's what makes the draft exciting, and everyone has different opinions, different thoughts on what makes players successful, and so I think ours versus any other team is going to be different. It's going to be different from public, and so it's exciting to kind of get behind the curtain and really hammer away at what those tiers are, as you call it, or the rankings are for the Blackhawks, and what our staff believes and how we see things lining up. And so we're excited to do that, but we're not quite at that point yet.
Going into your fourth draft, is the process evolved, or do you look at this any differently, I guess, from here on out into kind of making those decisions?
I think evolve is a good way of putting it, where I'll say we're getting better, but we're getting better at our process, I would say. I'm not suggesting that we're any better than anyone else at the draft, but our process, with more players in the system, how they're looking, we're starting to see some of those players come out. We can evaluate what's worked, what hasn't. You can just pick apart your process a little bit with every draft that goes by, and so that's become more seamless. Even you feel it on draft day and going in especially from day 1 to day 2, where you can see that work that's gone in the process that's kind of playing out makes things much more smooth when your one day ends and the next one begins, and how you just kind of seamlessly work right into the next day. And so I think you're always evolving, you're always working things out that maybe you think could be more smooth, or areas you want more information. But our staff's excellent. Mike Donahue does a great job with our amateur group, and no, I think I'm really happy with where we're at with our draft process.
I know going into this year, you probably weren't expecting to kind of pick in this range. You were hoping to kind of graduate to the next step. In some ways, do you see this as like a silver lining, where we're getting a higher pick than we thought we were going into the year, and it's kind of a bonus going into this summer, and you're just going into the draft?
Yeah, I think it's sort of that. Look, like, we are where we are, and we're going to pick third overall. We're going to get an opportunity for a really good player. It's almost, you're looking back at the season where it's the tale of two seasons, right? It was the first part, and through the middle, it was frustrating, a little disappointing, obviously, based on what we realistically thought we could do. But then you saw the end with the young players and the youth movement that was starting to come, and that was super exciting. That was something that we saw coming, and it was nice to see that play out a little bit at the NHL level, and shows that optimism that we did share for a long time, but allowing the NHL, our NHL fans, to start to see that play out in real time. And so that was exciting. But you know what, we are where we are, and so third overall is a pretty damn good place to acquire more talent, and we'll add it to a really strong prospect pool.
This might be another very early question,
Yep.
but without getting state secrets. But how will being remote this year and not being in the fish tank on site maybe change the overall experience for you and your team?
Well, it'll be different. The experience certainly will be different, right? The theater and the atmosphere of being in a rink won't be there, but I believe we'll have the opportunity to have more candid discussion around the table, right? It's just that opportunity isn't necessarily there live on the floor with cameras and mics and teams right next to you, and it's loud, and so it's just not conducive to that much discussion. Not that at that point there should be too much discussion, but things happen and surprises in your mind happen and options arise, whether it be trade or move down, move up, and it'll be nice to be able to speak more freely. I think business will be a little bit easier, but the atmosphere is obviously going to be very different. So we'll see. I think that's an intriguing thing about this year is it's totally different. How's that going to be easier, harder? I don't really have those answers. We'll just kind of learn about it when we're doing the draft. So.
What's the current timeline on the coaching situation?
Yeah, no real timeline. We're going through the process right now. We're really excited about the people we've gotten to talk to, we will get to talk to, and so it's not necessarily about timeline. We just want to get this right, and we want to make sure we have all the information to get it right, and that's kind of what we're going through right now.
Would it help to have that coach involved in this evaluation as much as possible?
I don't think so. No, it's so hard to for someone, even if you coach or take like your pro staff, right? Your pro scouting staff, they don't have the insight into that player pool, and it's just it's a totally different animal, and it's a unique process that we run through that's very specific to the people that are involved every day, and the amateur staff and our strategy teams, and so it's not really something that the head coach or anyone else would be all that involved in, other than just as a spectator.
Kyle, speaking of coaching, the carousel is starting to turn a little bit.
Yep.
With most of these guys in this club. How do you obviously keep your eye on it,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you react or is there a reaction when, say, a key person leaves a club that might somehow be suitable for your club?
I guess it could spur discussion, but I don't think it creates much of a reaction. I think we've got a sense of who the pool is and who the candidates could be, and so. But I don't think any change, materially impacts our process.
As you started the process, have you, prioritized any areas or anything that's common that you guys have discussed this more, whether it's someone with NHL experience or how much the importance of them prioritizing the young players as they come in as coach, or what is there anything that you bring to light about just those discussions?
Yeah, well, look, I think a coach working with younger players, and that will be key, because that's, we are, we're going to be a younger team moving forward, and you saw a peak to that at the end of the season, and so, but I don't necessarily think that has to color what we go out and get, right? We're going to talk to a bunch of very qualified candidates that we feel very passionate about, that it's going to be determined in that room and in the interviews when, if it feels right, how they approach things, and if that's a right fit for us, because in the end we want someone that's going to come in and help these young players that we're very excited about, that we think have a ton of promise. They're going to have they're going to need someone that's going to allow them to develop and allow them to grow, and through that grow our status in the win column, right? And that's something that's all connected, right? And so we're looking to check a number of boxes there, but ultimately we want someone that's excited about what's going on in Chicago, and based on the reaction and my phone every day, this is it's an appealing job, and we feel that and we know that, and but we've got to find the right person that fits what we're doing, and that's kind of the course we're running right now.
You have several potential draft picks at 3 rated around the same level, like Central Scouting has said. Could you be more targeted to or tailor it to specific needs for the team? You know, a certain profile for that pick.
Yeah. No. Look, like my philosophy is we do like to go best player available, but sometimes the discussions are so close where you have to break that somehow, and you know, is it position sometimes? Is it something else? You know, there's other factors outside of just, you know, that rating or you know, place on your board where, you know what, they are kind of in a bucket, right, or a tier, and you know, what other elements come into play that we can separate these 2 or 3 players? You know, is it position? Is it the style of play? Is it what we've got already versus what one of these players provides? So there's a number of different things, because sometimes you can't go position because they all play the same position, you know, and so there's different things that will eventually have to break that tie. And so, you know, position, if there are different ones in a grouping where you're considering all those players for one pick, then it's something that definitely goes into the mix.
Do you have a limit to how many coaches you'd like to interview or target number?
I don't know if we've ever thought about it that way. It's probably not, but you know, you can't go talk to, like, you know, 20 people. You just don't have that time, right? That's pretty tough. You could, but you're probably not getting what you need out of those interviews. So again, you also don't want to waste people's time either, right? So we're constantly getting in front of people and making sure that you know, no stone is left unturned, and we want to make sure that in the end we come to the best decision for the Chicago Blackhawks, and you know, we feel like we're on that path now, but we don't want to rush it. We just want to get it right.
Does Andrews, is he still in the mix?
Yeah, Andrews is certainly in the mix, and you know, I think what we saw from him certainly at the end of the year with our young players, how they responded to him, how we heard, you know, players in the exit meetings respond to him, was quite positive. And so that's certainly got to be taken into account. And you know, one of the main reasons why we were confident in having him fill the interim role, and what we saw again throughout his time here in Chicago, you know, again, the wins maybe didn't pile up the way anyone would have hoped, is that I can't name one of our younger players that hasn't gotten better under Anders. Not one. They've all improved, and that's crucial to where we're going. And so that's something that's very, very top of mind, no matter who we interview, you know. And so Anders has that feather in his cap. I can say that because I saw it, you know, and people have written about it, right? Player goes down to Rockford, they come up better, and throughout the season, you know, early in the season we saw some players get better, and then you see the young players that were here that, you know, some of them were here a very short time, but they were put into situations to succeed, and were given feedback that was that resulted in them continuing to grow. And then, you know, you see a player like a Frank Nazar who took off in the second half. You know, it's got to be attributed to someone. You know, well, obviously the player, but they're getting some positive direction there. And so there's, so yeah, he's certainly in the mix because, you know, we're going to be growing this through our young players and our exciting prospects, and they've prospered under him. And so that's all we can really ask of him. And so he's certainly in the mix because of that.
Is it your intention to keep Mark Eaton in his role as Rockford IceHogs coach, like indefinitely, or, you know, return him to you know, to his former role?
You know, I think we'll figure that out once Rockford's done. We'll chat with Eats and see how everything shakes out up top too. You know, we've got a candidate in Anders that you know, was filling that role before, and so we want to make sure we run our process up here, and then that'll all trickle down after that. So we'll get Chicago settled, and then figure out where that leaves things down the line. So, but it's probably a conversation we have to have with with Eats, but they're in the playoff mix right now and doing very well, so we'll just leave them to that.
And who has stood out to you for the games that you've seen with Rockford?
Yeah, well, Joey Anderson had a hell of a game the other night. And so, but you know, I'm assuming you're asking more about the younger guys, which is fine. But you know, do give credit to Joey and some of those veteran guys who have played very well. But you know, Kevin Korchinski, I thought, has had a really strong. Lights going off and on here. Thanks, Lindsay. No, I think the defense core I thought has been quite good. You know, all of our young defensemen, and it's been exciting. You know, Aiden Thompson got his first pro goal the other night, and he's been buzzing around and making stuff happen. And I thought, you know, Colton coming back from injury had a really strong couple games, and Sammy Savoie has, you know, just been doing his thing and buzzing around. And so, you know, it's honestly, they haven't lost yet, and so like there's a reason for that. Is everyone's playing pretty well, and Drew Comesso, that's, you know, he's been fantastic. He's been awesome in the playoffs. So I think Drew has been a standout for sure. He's been great, and so really excited to see his play. But again, they're winning, and there's a reason, is because everyone's playing quite well, and so it's, in the end, it's a great experience for them. You know, winning against Chicago, playing against a really heavy, hard to play against team in Milwaukee is a great education for these young guys too. That, you know, they're playing against a really good team in Milwaukee, and they're hard to play against. So, but they're getting a taste of playoff hockey, and that's invaluable.